Alright everyone, this video is on romantic literature. That is the new unit that we are doing. So while you're watching this video, I want you to be working on your Cornell notes. So I'm going to go ahead and start this presentation and have you write down your essential question. So the essential question is, how do the historical events of the early 1800s influence the change in ideas from the logical rhetoric of the Revolution to the self-reliant reflection of Romanticism? The reason why I'm kind of recording outside here is because Romanticism, which came after the Revolutionary War, and all of the revolutionary documents that we read in the previous unit, Romanticism isn't really about love, it's sort of about nature. So I'm kind of outside right now, so you can kind of see the nature around me, which mostly is just suburbs, but probably going to move inside soon after we talk about these paintings, because it's kind of a little awkward out here recording a video. So I've got three paintings for you to look at. The first painting is by Albert Bierstadt. He is a German-American painter, and you can kind of see that in his picture he uses a lot of chiaroscuro, just kind of, and I'm just going to kind of write it out for you so you can see how to spell it, because you might want to write it into your notes in the beginning. You might have heard of this term before in your art class if you've taken art, and it's really just about putting together some really dark contrasts of darkness and lightness. Then as you can see, this is kind of just the wild landscape that is America as people were expanding west. All right, so moving on and going to the next painting, you'll see that it's got a lot of caravans right here. All right, so a lot of people, on horseback moving westward. And this is another Albert Bierstadt painting. It's called Emigrants Crossing the Plains or the Oregon. It's actually the Oregon Trail. So you'll see that there's a lot of sky, trees, mountains, really wild and untamed nature. And you'll see like animals and people right next to the animals. Again, you've got kind of a big contrast between the light that is over here and the darkness that is over here. All right, on to the next painting. This is called The Peaceable Kingdom by Edward Hicks. And you can see that not only do we have animals, it's kind of reminiscent of the Garden of Eden. You see little like angels, little cupids around. You see a lot of wild animals. And nearby are a bunch of Native Americans along with colonists. All right, so you can kind of see humans interacting with each other peacefully, and alongside our animals being peaceful as well. So this really shows a lot about people's respect of nature and that idea of nature being all around them, and trying to promote equality amongst the people and between people and animals as well. So just to give you an idea of how romantic ideas that aren't about love and are about nature, how that plays out in today's world. You'll see in this YouTube video that was really, really popular years and years ago, this one guy getting really excited about seeing a rainbow for the first, a double rainbow for the first time.
Full on double rainbow all the way across the sky. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh God.
So he sees this rainbow and he kind of starts crying because he just can't believe how glorious it is and how it really speaks to him and how he's able to examine himself based on all of these outward experiences that he has, and feeling that oneness with nature. All right, so back to your notes, you should have written down a few things about nature and how Romanticism isn't about love, it's about respect of nature and harmony between nature and animals. We're going to go ahead and move on to the historical background of the early 1800s. So we've got in 1803, Thomas Jefferson doubled the nation's size by signing the Louisiana Purchase. In 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected as president, and he was known as the People's President. And in 1838, the Trail of Tears forced westward migration of Native Americans. So you see like that, this is the Trail of Tears right here. You can see kind of the different routes that were taken to bring Native Americans towards the West. But not only that, a lot of the citizens, American citizens and American people themselves also started moving westward just because there's not enough space and enough land for everyone. And there's also that kind of call to adventure of wanting to be the pioneer to discover the new land that is out west. And because of that, the United States continued to fight for more and more land in North America. So the U.S. got Texas from Mexico in 1830s, and then they also got California in 1850. There were a lot of technologies around this time as well. There was the railroad, which allowed for traveling by 1869. These rail lines linked east and west coasts, so people could really travel from one end of the country to the other. And then there was also a lot of farming technologies that allowed people to farm sort of the grasslands that are in the Midwest and in the West. And then there was the telegraph, which allowed people to communicate with each other even when they were far away from each other. The social context of this time were because of so many new technologies, there were a lot of factories that were being created. And these factories hired children. They also created a lot of unsafe working conditions, and people started noticing that they kind of ruined some of the stuff that they loved about nature, for example, pollution. And then because of that, there were labor unions that were being created, and people started thinking about maybe not letting children work until they got a little bit older. Also at this time, there were two groups of people who were also fighting for their rights to have equal rights as the white man. So the women's rights group had a convention in 1848 in Seneca Falls, and then the abolitionists were a group of people who wanted to end slavery once and for all, not just in the North, but in the entirety of the United States, as well as in the new states as well. So onto the literary context of this time. So in Romantic literature, it's all about the individual, a single person trying to figure out who they are and trying to figure out how they can label and define themselves without being influenced by other people and what other people have to say or how other people behave. We've got another painting here that shows more of that chiaroscuro and nature. Romanticism was an artistic movement that first started in Europe, and then it moved towards America. And it was not necessarily to write about love, although it can include some love ideals, and especially very idealized love like that between a knight and a princess. But really, they were idealizing the sublime and thinking really about the positivity of humanity. Because previously, during the Enlightenment, people were really just thinking about how to reason things out, how to be very logical. But Romanticism is all about emotion. All right, so seeing the rainbow, the double rainbow, and crying about it. Having that one person's moment with nature without anybody else around. trusting your gut, trusting your imagination, having an imagination, enjoying the quietness that is nature, and then also considering how supernatural beings, the fantastic and the exotic lifestyle can really influence fear being one of the leading emotions as well. And that showing how active your imagination can be. Um, a branch of Romanticism is called Transcendentalism. It's the term is coined by German philosopher Immanuel Kant. And he kind of talked about people transcending themselves and realizing that sometimes you can learn a lot about yourself by reflection and thinking about yourself more and meditating, kind of like this cat is doing here with some yoga, and not really observing what's going on outside, but try to be more in touch with your own personal self. There are two authors that we are going to be reading for this unit. There's Ralph Waldo Emerson. Um, he was particularly interested in the East and in Egypt and some of the Eastern cultures and bringing that exoticism and supernatural ideas from the East to the West. He was also a Unitarian minister, and he came up with the idea of the universal being or the universal mind that shows that people are actually all very much connected to each other and connected to nature because of God being the link between all things and all people and all plants as well. And then his essay, Nature, really influenced another man named Henry David Thoreau, who was a very rebellious guy. He was put in jail. He didn't pay years of poll taxes because he did not agree with the war against Mexico for Texas. But once he read Nature, he was like, okay, I'm done being next to people. I'm done with people in general. I'm going to see if I can live by myself and on my own. So he went into the woods and he lived 3 years in the woods, and he wrote this book called Waldo. And this book is all about how he was able to live for, build his house for only like $18 and just being really self-sufficient. And he also talked about a bunch of different ideas, like his opposition towards slavery and how the factories were destroying the environment and how people were ruining the environment. And it was all about civil disobedience too, which is the reason why he was put in jail in the first place. He was showing that as a citizen, he has the rights to protest, and his way of protesting is not paying his taxes. Other writers of this time that are very famous American writers that we're not going to be reading, but you may already know about, are Washington Irving, who wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The Scarlet Letter, Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote a bunch of short stories that you probably read in a lot of your English classes, and also Herman Melville, who wrote about a giant whale that these sailors were trying to hunt called Moby Dick. So at this point, I want you to answer your essential question. You can pause and kind of use these sentence starters to help you out. All right, and then after that, I'm going to have you do an activity. You can work with a partner if you'd like. You're just going to read this text called Nature. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's the one that really influenced Thoreau. You're going to highlight it and copy down the difficult vocabulary like you usually do on Google Classroom. And then at the bottom, you'll write down the main idea in a complete sentence and then 3 supporting details in bullet points. Those supporting details could be in quotations if you want it to be direct textual evidence, or you can summarize. Either way is fine. All right, thank you for watching.